What happens when even the most advanced technology is no longer fast enough, and the soldiers are left to wait for the inevitable? The sky seems calm, but inside it is a storm of steel that is about to explode. 5:30 a.m., April 2025, over Belgorod, Russia, 4 American-made HIMARS missiles roared through the thick fog at Mach 25. Launched from deep inside Ukraine, they were 43 miles from their target, but the Russian S-400 Triumph operators were completely blind. For the next 90 seconds, their world would be plunged into absolute darkness. These missiles are headed for the Novy Oskol substation. This is the light switch for the Russian war machine in the region. It powers the S-400 radar, operates fuel depots for tank divisions, and maintains military communications. Its destruction would be a critical strategic blow, and this is how the Ukrainians are getting away with it. At the same time, the US missile is launching a swarm of Ukrainian sharks, and an FPV drone is hovering over the treetops 15 meters away. This is the Fog Ghost Swarm. A high-tech, shark-shaped drone with a 30x thermal camera is piercing the fog, acting as the eyes of the entire operation. It leads a group of cheap kamikaze drones that spew clouds of chaff programmed to look like a flock of birds on Russian radar. They were creating a ghost in the machine, fooling the multi-billion-dollar Russian supercomputer with a $400 party trick, and the multi-million-dollar missile launcher that fired those missiles. It was already a ghost. After the painful lesson learned at Prasovsk, the crew had 5 minutes to pack up and disappear before Russian counterfire turned their position into a bomb crater. They were long gone. At 6:01 a.m., the first American-made HIMARS rocket and its swarm of Ukrainian drones crashed into a wall just 10 miles from their target. It was a digital storm. In the Ukrainian bunker, the screen dissolved into a blizzard of white noise. Krasuka 4 was at work, a $50 million machine with the sole mission of turning the air into a nightmare of electronically jammed GPS signals and communications jamming. One of the FPV drones, now blind, lurched violently and crashed into a tree. But here's the little secret the Russians don't want to reveal. Krasuka sucks up power like a gas-guzzling Hummer. Running at full power for more than 15 minutes, it had to slow down to avoid overheating. A small window of opportunity, the Ukrainians had planned for it. And its sophisticated filter had a blind spot. It couldn't tell the difference between a high-tech drone and a flock of birds. The Ukrainian operator gave the order. The fog swarm was active. The FPV drones, now flying low, began spewing pre-programmed clouds of chaff. On Russian radar screens, the attack suddenly looked like a giant flock of birds. The Russian computer's Kalman filter began to choke, trying to process hundreds of fake, low-priority targets. At the same time, the first high-altitude Mars missile, now denied GPS signals, did something amazing. It switched to its internal inertial guidance system. It was now flying by memory in a hyper-accurate internal compass. And below, the Shark drone flying under the main jamming field gets an image of the substation through the fog. It shines an invisible laser at the main transformer. The laser cannot be jammed. The HIMARS missiles, which cannot see the outside world, now have only one mission: fly to the point. While the Russian EW officer was trying to figure out why he was being attacked by a swarm of ghost pigeons, the Ukrainian crew, now miles away, fired a second missile. The Krasuka operator, completely overwhelmed, had to reboot the system to clear the jam. The jam field flickered and then died. The signal was back. But the first missile launch, quiet as it was on the ground, was a scream on the electromagnetic spectrum. It had just smashed a hornet's nest, and the Pantsir S-1 was awake, its gun swiveling. At 4:32, the Pantsir S-1 roared to life. It wasn't the electronic noise of Krasuka, It was the raucous sound of kinetic fury. A 57E6 missile tore through the air at 70 meters per second, a hot white streak of fire against the gray sky. The first American-made high-altitude Mars rocket, flying entirely on instinct and guided by lasers, disappeared in a bright white ball of fire. It never knew what hit it. A stray FPV drone, too slow to avoid being torn apart by shrapnel. In the bunker, the operator monitors the situation. Only 3 missiles are left ready. Pantsir is an incredibly powerful system if you're a fighter pilot. But for this flock of birds, it has 2 fatal flaws. First, dense fog obscures its thermal sensors, like finding a black cat in a dark storm. Second, there's a 2-second targeting lag. That's a long time when you're trying to shoot down a drone flying at 60 miles an hour, weaving through the trees. And the biggest flaw in physics, the rolling hills between the Pantsir and the birds, weren't just scenery, they were radar walls. The Ukrainian operator ordered them all to be exploited. The flock split up. The FPV drones swooped down, weaving through the birch forest like angry wasps. Then they began dropping flares, each burning hotter than a Vegas bonfire, drawing the Pantsir's fire. The shark-shaped drone does the opposite, hugging the terrain, using a small hill to hide from the Pantsir's radar while keeping its laser scanner aimed at the substation. The second high-altitude Mars rocket launched from the new location, receiving updated laser coordinates. It adjusted its trajectory by half a degree. A 90 kilograms love letter, rejected by GPS, was approaching fast. The artillery system was now running out of missiles at the ready, wasting flare shells. But every launch, every explosion was the death knell of the real monster. The S-400 Triumph system was fully activated. The radar began scanning the entire sky. The central processor can track hundreds of targets at the same time. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian crew withdrew, taking the launcher with them, leaving the area, as their position had been detected by Russia. At 6:33 a.m., the S-400 was not a local defense system. It was a strategic monster, and its massive radar coverage was a death sentence. It locked onto the remaining drone swarm and the oncoming American missiles with contemptuous ease. A 48 N6 hypersonic missile roared at Mach 14, a powerful strike aimed straight at the sky. The second HIMARS missile, which had perfectly crossed the radar shadow, evaporated mid-flight. There was no explosion, just a brief, silent flash, and then it was gone. It was gone. 2 missiles down, 2 more to go. The mission now hung in the balance at Russian command. They thought they had won. But the S-400 had a fatal secret flaw. Its powerful supercomputer, designed to track multi-billion-dollar fighter jets and intercontinental ballistic missiles, began to get clogged with data from 100 fake birds. Its sophisticated algorithm has a 3-second lag when trying to solve an impossible equation. It's like your phone's autocorrect function, turning a complex sentence into gibberish. It technically works, but the result is a miserable, embarrassing failure. And while Russia's computers are crashing, Ukraine's shark drones are playing the role of shepherds. It herded the last of the FPV drones into a tight cluster, then guided the incoming third HIMARS rocket down a new path, one that used a low hill to create the perfect radar shadow. The S-400 is the most powerful air defense system on Earth, but it can't see over a damn hill. The Shark drone then did something crazy. It raised itself just enough to point its laser at the substation, letting the beam reflect off the thick fog. The third higher missile, blind to everything else, saw only that beautiful, sparkling dot. It slipped through the S-400's mesh like a ghost. And the HIMAR crew, they did it again. When the Russian computer finally located the second shot, a barrage of Russian artillery rained down on the empty mudflats. The Ukrainians readied themselves and fired their fourth and final missile from their third position. The S-400, now completely confused by the sky full of ghost birds and real missiles appearing and disappearing, fired 2 more multi-million-dollar ghost missiles. At 7:10 a.m., the era of hypersonic missiles and billion-dollar radar systems ended. The battle for the Novi Oskol substation had come to this. A group of sentries on a frozen roof, and a sound, a low, ominous whistle cutting through the fog, a sound that grew louder with each passing millisecond. They couldn't see what was making it, but they knew it was coming. They did the only thing they could. They opened fire. The night air exploded in a desperate hail of AK-74 bullets, splattered into the gray void. It was the classic definition of futility. Trying to shoot down a 200-pound Mach 2.5 missile with a rifle was like trying to swat a bullet with a slingshot. It wasn't a fight. It was a prayer. And miles away, another prayer remained unanswered. Russian artillery continued to pound the empty mudflats where the high launch pads had once unleashed a multi-million-dollar fury against a long-vanished enemy. Each crater was a monument to their utter defeat. A perfect illustration of the brutal effectiveness of the shoot-and-run doctrine. In the Ukrainian bunker, the operator saw the muzzles of the guards flash through the Shark's thermal camera. They were a nuisance, a variable to be eliminated. He did a quick calculation and gave the order. Fog phantoms deployed. The jammer was about to rewrite the rules of the game. He pulled one of the last FPV drones out of the air. This wasn't a $150,000 missile. It was a $400 3D printed kamikaze drone with a small anti-personnel mine zip-tied to the back. And here was the tactical genius. He was using a disposable asset to make way for an irreplaceable asset. He wasn't going to risk having his last 2 HIMARS missiles go astray because of a lucky rifle shot. Drones exploded and the roof fell silent. The last line of defense was wiped out by the cheapest weapon on the battlefield. Now there was nothing in the way. The last 2 American-made high-altitude Mars rockets, number 3 and number 4, were completely unobstructed. Below them, the Shark drone held its laser scanner, a perfect, unwavering point of light on the core of the main transformer. At 7:45 a.m., the Shark drone's camera zoomed in, its laser scanner holding a perfect, unwavering point of light. The target came into view. On a nearby rooftop, Russian sentries were firing flares frantically into the sky. Each one missed its non-existent target by inches. The Russians knew the missiles were coming. They just didn't know how to stop them. It took the 500-ton station at least 20 seconds to activate the emergency shutdown command, but the remaining 2 Mars heavyweights arrived in just 50 milliseconds. Boom, and then boom. 2 impacts less than a second apart. 2 perfect hits. It wasn't just a bang, it was a lesson in high-speed physics. From a bunker near Kharkiv, Ukrainian operators combined American-made missiles with homegrown drones to turn part of Russia's energy empire into a massive blackout. Lesson learned: don't provoke a hacking bear, especially when it's at its peak. If you respect smart fighting, like and subscribe. The big question now that Ukraine has demonstrated the ability to blind the S-400, which key Russian asset should be the next target for this strategy? The Kerch Bridge, a large command bunker, or something else? Write your top target in the comments.